Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be continuing in this video from where I left off in the previous one with my campaign game where I'm pitting my Russian squad against attacking German infantry. Apologies again for the sudden cut-off last time, but I did notice what was happening just as my camera died, so I halted immediately after that turn. So those of you who watched the last video all the way through will remember that my group C were being fired at. Now, very fortunately for me, the incoming fire had no effect. I've been very glad of the feedback I had for that video. In two things in particular, two of you very kindly pointed out some errors that I'd made, so I'd just like to clear those up right now. The first of them was that I had done a silly with the wounding rule, and Private Igorsky should not have been wounded at all. Now, the problem is I'm quite fond of a house rule which increases the frequency of wounding. And the problem when you like something like that, especially if you've got a brain like mine, is that you get so used to it you forget what the actual rules say. So apologies for that. The actual rules for wounding are a little more involved, and they certainly don't take place as a result of pinning. It's usually if a natural if a killed in action result or a failed route potentially happens, and it has to match the number required before you test for wounding. So going by my memory of what happened to Private Igorsky when he was pinned, he was definitely not wounded. And this is important in a campaign because, as I said in the previous video, if you survive to the end of a scenario in a wounded state, you gain Elan points for that. So to keep things fair, Igorsky is miraculously unharmed. The good news for me, to balance out the bad news of him not getting any Elan points if he lives, is that at least I have a fully functional soldier who doesn't suffer any ill effects. The other thing I got wrong, and this is a mistake I commonly make in Upfront despite rereading the rules an awful lot, is crewed status. When a person crewing a weapon is pinned, he does not lose his crewed status. The only thing that removes a crewed status is either voluntarily ditching that state as an action or the soldier involved being killed and eliminated. Any other effect, being pinned or even wounded, you're still able to crew a weapon. So those were the things I just wanted to clear up. But other than that, picking up from where we left off, the Germans have just had their turn and they've subjected me to rather heavy fire. And looking at my cards, I'm rather keen to return the favour, but I think my options for doing so are slightly limited. Half of my A group is still pinned, so they're not really going to be doing anything. And unfortunately, far too many of my group C are pinned as well. Now, they still enjoy a flanking position on the German group B. So just doing a quick count up of their available firepower. They developed 12, so they could fire that card. And I think that's what I'm going to have them do. But before that, I really want to get my command group forward, so I'm going to try moving them up. They can rely a bit on the cover of the building they were in while they move forward. And then I will open fire on German Group B. So I've got a firepower of 2. Not unnaturally, they're not going to take any chances because they're out in the open in clear terrain, so they're going to play the concealed card on me. I'll do the usual, go by ranks, work left to right. Let's see what happens. So Private Bernhoff is not at all bothered by my shooting. Private Wolf similarly does not mind. Private Grease, nope, he's definitely not fussed. Corporal Hessel, nope. And Sergeant Dietinger, no. So, all right, Group C unfortunately has expended a fair amount of ammunition, but not really achieved anything. I suppose importantly, we've bought ourselves a little more time because we're still in deck 1 of 4, but we're blazing our way steadily through it. And I'll just see what I get. All right, I won't say no to a concealed card. No, I won't say no to 2 concealed cards because I imagine the Germans are going to be upping the ante from their side. And I don't think I'm mistaken. Now, they don't have many options this turn, but they can do me some damage. And in a fairly sensible move, well, they have choices really. If they want to attack my weaker groups, the ones with shakier morale, they could always go for them, but they're hunkering down in a building. The other option is to hit my Group C, who are already almost half pinned. And if the Germans fire with their Group B, I have cover, but it's not amazing. My high morale group is advancing, but they still benefit from the buildings cover, and it's going to be quite hard to demoralize them. So the Germans have a bit of an interesting choice here. Given the relative strengths and weaknesses of the cover, they'll do the sensible thing, and they're going to open fire from Group B onto Group C with that firing card. I, of course, am not going to tolerate that, so in addition to the wall, which gives them a -1, I'll apply the concealed card to make it an end total of -1 for their fire strength. So, Private Storchillo, you're fine. Private Solovyv, you're fine. Private Christov, oh dear. Private Christov has panicked. Let's see what's happened to him. He has successfully routed out of there. So Private Christov has done a runner, but he is all right. Well, as long as none of us tell the Commissar what he did at any rate. Private Wyloft, you're fine. Junior Sergeant Aliv, he is fine, and the Germans have suffered a malfunction. So there's 5 of them in the group. Okay. Nice to know from my perspective that somebody's weapon broke, but unfortunately, it's not a weapon that really affects the incoming fire, although it does give them a -1, so Sergeant Dietinger is having some slight problems with his machine pistol. But as I say, it doesn't massively adversely affect them. Private Igorsky, you're all right. And lastly, Corporal Borisov, you're all right. To be perfectly honest, that was a bit of a weak burst of fire, and I don't think the German player would have been expecting too much from that. It is a bit of a bonus for him that he's driven one of my men from the field, but I suppose it could have been worse, and at least they have a jammed weapon into the bargain. So they are not really going to do anything beyond that. They're very conscious that all this shooting is blazing through the deck rather quickly, so they're going to see what cards they draw. That does not look too bad at all. Back to the Soviets. I really want rally cards. I desperately need rally cards to be able to do anything. But for the moment, I'm just going to have to content myself with getting my Group B into some cover in the woods. Draw some fresh cards and oh great. What are my chances of ever being able to use that anytime soon? That's a bit more promising, but we still don't have enough firepower. I'm going to have to sit on these for a bit. Over to the Germans now. A bit of math will be required here. So at relative range 3, their Group C will have no trouble firing that card. They might as well pour that into my Group C, while Dietinger has a go fixing his weapon. I think that's given what cards the Germans have at the moment, that's probably the most sensible way forward for them. So Dietinger is going to try and fix his weapon, and oh dear, he does not succeed. In fact, the thing is so badly broken that he is now unarmed. I'm just going to find him a little unarmed counter so that I remember. Poor Dietinger, that's not gone very well for him. I wonder if their Group C can make it up a little by pouring some admittedly very heavy fire into us. So that's knocked down to 2 for us being behind the wall. And additionally, I'm going to take it down to 1 by having us concealed. But let's see what happens. Also, it is the start of deck 3. So part of my cunning plan is working, although not very convincingly. I was hoping to essentially start a bit of a firefight and waste as much time as I could, because of course shooting at multiple targets, i.e. the larger groups, does spend the deck faster. Of course it does run the risk of casualties. It's a two-way street, that one. But let's see what happens. So the incoming German fire strength is now 1. Private Storchillo has to make a panic check. In fact, no, he has panicked because it's 3, so he has successfully routed out of there. Another of my men has broken and run. Private Solovyv, nope, he's all right. Mikhailoft is all right. Sergeant Aliyev is okay. Igorsky is pinned. Now I must remember this time, he is pinned, but he is still crewing. And Corporal Borisov is okay. Oh dear, well that could have gone a lot better. So my Group C's firepower has been quite drastically reduced now. The Germans are going to take a chance and get rid of that rally card, because while they have been getting useful cards, they do need more options. So just getting rid of 1 to lighten their hand. Oh, that's a bit extraordinarily unlucky. Oh, sorry guys. I see my shuffling is up to its usual standard. Meanwhile, the Russians don't have all that many options either. I now definitely do not have enough firepower from any of my groups to put down any kind of convincing fire, which is really unfortunate. Although he's pinned, but he's still crewing, so in theory, Borisov is still putting out firepower of 5, and Mikhailoft is still putting out 1, so we're still doubling to 12. Actually, I lie. We can do it. Before we try anything, I'm going to have my centre group attempt to entrench, which they fail to do. Entrenching is another wonderful way of wasting time when you're on the defensive. So despite the losses we've taken, Group C is going to carry on determinedly plinking away at German Group B. Luckily for me, Group B has no defensive cards whatsoever by way of concealment, so we're going to go straight in. Private Bernhoff has been pinned. Private Wolf has been killed. Goodness. We finally have a casualty. Excuse me while I just find a dropped rifle for Wolf, because I expect Sergeant Dietinger will be wanting that in a minute. Private Grease is pinned as well. Corporal Hessel? No, he's fine. And Sergeant Dietinger, even with his reduced morale for being unarmed, is okay. So I think for the first time in this game, Russian Fire has actually achieved something. It's quite refreshing, that. Although my card draw is not... Oh, I was about to say my card draw is not taking me in any helpful directions, but all of a sudden it is. Back to the Germans now. They have a problem they need to sort out. They are going to play the Rally All cards to get Bernhoff and Greece sorted out, because they really do they do want the heavy firepower represented by that LMG back in action. So those two have sorted themselves out. They're going to discard two of those brush cards because, to be honest, at the moment no one's moving anywhere. And they want to carry on cycling more cards through their hand. Ah, that's better. Some options, including the ability to flank. That's going to be quite potent. For my part, I have 3 useless firing cards, but that rally card is most welcome. I have a tough choice, though. My Group A hasn't received much fire lately, and they are safely in a building, but they're quite vulnerable with those two pinned. My C group has taken a pounding, and as they're one of my main, they pretty much are my main fire base, I really want to get them back to as full an effectiveness as I can. I think I'm going to take a chance, hope the Germans don't target Group A anytime soon, and play the rally card to sort out Group C. Here's hoping I made the right decision. Now, of course, the problem with conscripts, I've taken an action now and just have to live with these cards until I can do something about it. Over on the German side, they're going to realise my worst fears, because that's a bit of a weak firing card, but they're going to chance their arm against my Group A. I have no defensive cards. The building reduces the fire strength to -1, but given that all of my low morale men are packed in there, it's still very risky. So let's see what happens. Private Nosenko is pinned. Private Kvasnikov is pinned as well. Oh dear. Private Sokolov is not, thank goodness, or he's not harmed in any way. And Private Zyakov is fine, although that was a bit of a near-run thing. Over here, Sergeant Dietinger is going to try and pick up, and he definitely succeeds. He picks up the unfortunate Wolf's bolt-action rifle, so he is no longer unarmed. He's got a decently ranged weapon. It also gives him slightly better close combat, which is a worrying thought for me. And the very last thing, the Germans are definitely going to take advantage of the benefits of that flank card and get their Group C on the move, because they're in a position to cause some mischief now. And they've got even more options. As for my part, I can do nothing to unpin any of my men in Group A. None of those firing cards are any good to me. I think It's a really tough choice. I do want to move my men further forward in order to prevent the Germans reaching relative range Chit 4. In fact, actually, if I have a chance, well, I don't really have any chance of reaching it myself, but I may yet deny them that opportunity. The question is, who do I want to throw forward? I think, given that Group C is moving to flank me, it makes the most sense for me to get my Group B moving forward. Then it might be easier to wriggle out of any flanking position the Germans may take on us. I'll just find my new relative range counter. So there we go. I'll just have to put up with having a handful of not so good cards. So without any interference from me, the Germans, looking through the various options in their hand, they are going to advance their Group B. It gets them moving forward and it gets rid of that flanking position that I've enjoyed on them for so long. And their Group C is going to dive safely into some brush and immediately gain a flanking position on my Group B. Okay, the tables have turned a little bit there. If they hadn't done that with the flanking position, they could have been really mean and chucked a stream on me, but they're hoping to enjoy at least one turn of firing at me, caught sort of out of position, and they'll save that nasty surprise for somebody else. In the meantime, they get a spare rally card, which is no bad thing, and more movement options. Over to me. Well, I'm definitely not helping anyone out much with these. The only thing I can do, and it's a bit of a forlorn hope, is I will get Group C to try firing at their Group C, just in the hope of disrupting them a little bit. So the range is 3. I've definitely got enough firepower. So I develop 2. They reduce me to 1 and then down to 0 between concealment and their cover. So Private Schussel is fine. Private Schumacher, not too worried. Private Streak, definitely not worried. Well, all I can say is we tried, and I'm still stuck with those 3 massive firepower cards, but ooh, don't think I'll be able to resist the temptation to use that one next turn. So over to the Germans. They're going to take a chance because they have got a hero card, they have got a rally card, and that's a pretty high morale group there. They're going to keep them moving until they have some decent terrain to stick them in. In the meantime, just to give me something else to worry about, they are going to advance their scouting element just to really pile the pressure on me. Because if I let those boys get to relative range 4 in advantageous terrain, that's half the battle gone to the Germans already. Really don't want to allow that. And so fairly happy with that. They're just going to draw their next cards. Ooh. Oh, okay. I sympathise with you guys there. Okay, as I said the previous turn, I'm not going to be able to resist the opportunity to try some mischief with that. So we're going to fire again, Group C, trying to pour it on into the German Group B. We develop firepower of 3. I think they are... Do I want to shoot at them, though? They are moving, so they're more exposed, but they're high morale. My odds of doing something nasty to them aren't that great. No, I am going to try and take out Group C. So no, don't switch targets, boys. We are going to try taking out Group C. So we've got 3 firepower. They have no concealment cards, so it's down to 2 for the brush. Private Schussel is pinned. Private Schumacher is pinned as well. Maybe I should have fired at Group B. And lastly, Private Streak is fine. So, all right, that was a pretty good result. I've suppressed, well, pinned, really, pinned one of their LMGs, so that's good news. And even better, I have more movement cards and some rather nice friendly terrain there. Question is, are the Germans going to allow me the luxury of doing anything with it? To be honest, their options are pretty rotten at the moment. They are going to use the Rally 2 card to get those two fine gentlemen back on their feet. So sadly, the Soviet triumph there is very fleeting. I shouldn't be surprised. These are elite troops after all. In the hope of getting good fire cards, they're going to carry on refraining from playing that stream card on my group. But they will discard these two because, to be perfectly honest... oh, actually... hold on. If they hadn't been pinned with the flanking fire, they could have fired one of those cards. That'll teach me not to pay attention. No, they are. So 8 with Streak backing them up, that's 10. So that's 20 firepower. Oh yes, then they're not going to mess this up. No, no, no. They are going to hang on to those for next turn and hope that we don't move. Unfortunately for them, we are going to finally dive behind a wall. And so the flanking fire ability goes away. In theory, I will never know how close I came to doom there. So those go into the discard. And I think, just so they're not flapping in the wind, I'm going to get Group C moving. I'm taking a little bit of a chance with this one because I've got no cover to give them immediately. But I think it's worth pushing forwards. Bear with me while I find a relative range counter. Here we are. And I'll just draw the card to replace them. Okay, that would be a start, trying to get my Group A back together. So German Group C is grinding their teeth with disappointment. They very, very nearly had us. That could have been absolutely devastating. As I say, in a real game situation, I would never have known how close I came to having that group just gunned down horribly. But for the moment, there's not a lot the Germans can do, actually. And to be perfectly honest, there's not much point them holding on to those two because they've lost the flanking advantage. So what they're going to do is... they're going to discard 2 of the cards. They're going to discard the weaker of the 2 firing cards. They're also going to gain some measure of revenge for my middle group wriggling out of the way by discarding the stream card on my Group C. I cannot reject the terrain, so we have bumped up against a stream. That's not very good at all. Ah, we could be in trouble. Well, unsurprisingly, I am going to rally the least vulnerable member of Group A. My rather cold-blooded logic is that it's going to be the hardest. He's going to be the hardest one for them to put down again. Not that that's saying much. I think his regular morale is 2, old Sokolov over there. What options do I have for shooting? They're not great, I don't think. Got 9 firepower points there, which is nowhere near adequate. I've got 14 there. We can play that card. The question is who to play it on. That's a powerful card. I think the time's come to try targeting his Group B. And luckily for me, he has no concealment cards, so it's firepower of 6. They're moving in the open, so that takes it up to 7. Private Bernhoff is pinned. Private Greece is pinned as well. Corporal Hessel is pinned. And Sergeant Dietinger is killed. And so for the second time, this rifle gets dropped. And the German squad has suffered its second casualty. That's not good for them, so their squad leader is dead and their assistant squad leader is pinned, which means their hand size is now reduced to 4. Oh no, it's not, say they. Corporal Hessel is fine, thanks to the play of a hero card. So I'm not unhappy with that result. It has severely disrupted Group B and taken a little bit of its combat power away, so that was well worth it. I've just realised something. I should have applied a -1. Luckily for me, Sergeant Dietinger was killed by a considerable margin, and he would have still been killed, but bad. I should have remembered outgoing fire from a stream, -1 to strength. Okay, over to the Germans now. Well, again, I'm going to suffer a bit of a short-lived triumph. That rally card is going to go straight into getting Bernhoff and Greece on the move again. Meanwhile, German Group C, the range is extremely close now, and they develop a firepower of 10. They are going to try and get their own back by hammering my Group C. It's the most tempting target for them. I have no concealment cards, and I have no cover at the stream edge, so this is probably going to hurt. So, Private Solovyv, you are pinned. Private Wyhailoft, you are pinned. Sergeant Aliyev, nope, you're fine. Igorsky, oh, you've been killed. Ah, actually, no, he's definitely killed. Yes. No two ways about that. And Corporal Borisov is surprisingly all right. I'll just close those up. And I just need to find a machine pistol counter just in case anyone in that group may in the future want to pick up the machine pistol. Okay, so things are definitely getting a bit more intense for everyone now. Germans refill their hand. Not a bad set of options. Back to the Soviets, right. I am really stuck now. I have too many men who are pinned and not enough rally cards to help me do something about it. I'm going to play that Rally 1 card to get Soloviev back on his feet. I'm not too sure what else I can do. The German squad has suffered. I mean, I've lost 3 men altogether, 2 routed and 1 killed, and the Germans have lost 2 killed, but I can absorb the casualties a bit better. So I'm thinking it's very, very tempting to try and push this group forward. Now, I do realise, looking at the relative range markers over there, that if something gives on my left, I could be opening myself up to being flanked and then encircled, and that would be very bad news indeed. But equally, I don't want to let that group get too close. See, really, the other thing I could do is save the Ford card to help this group across the stream, but I'm not sure what purpose that would serve. And the other consideration is they're not going anywhere until I can rally Private Mihailoff, and that could take any number of turns. So, all things being equal, Annoyingly, this group at relative range 5 develops only 14 firepower points, so I can't play any of the mighty firepower cards I have. I think I am going to chance ordering an advance. They're going to go forward and essentially become a physical barrier to the Germans from advancing any further. I just hope that's a good decision. A large part of me is telling me I'm probably going to regret it. We'll see what happens. Now, luckily for me, the Germans don't have that many options in terms of what they can do. They might just hop that group forward, maximize their firepower if they can. And also there is some merit in this flanking idea, especially as, well, to be honest, if they break either of my flanking groups, they're well on the way to winning the game. But they also would have the satisfaction of being in a position to crush the middle group as well. So it's quite tempting to do that. Plus, while it gives them an edge against that group who are in vulnerable terrain, they've actually moved some distance away from the group who are in more advantageous terrain. So we're basically being pincered. So it's not a bad idea on their part. Also, because they've got a bit of an embarrassment of riches in rally cards, they might get rid of that one. They may also, because there's no real chance of a decent flanking card on the horizon, be tempted to get rid of this card because it's an insanely high card, but their odds of firing it anytime soon are not great. So they're going to take a chance and shift it on and see what they get by way of replacements. Okay. Could be better, could be worse. 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 Could be better, could be wor Now for me, there's really nothing I can do. None of my teams generate enough firepower anymore to be able to bring either of those to bear on the Germans. So I'm going to discard that one because it's way too high. And I'm going to discard a marsh card on that group there. After some deliberation, they decide they're going to reject it. So they're going to go to lateral movement, the rifle disappears, and they go back a range marker. And I draw my cards. Ooh, rally 4. Thank goodness, that's what we've been wanting. Meanwhile, the Germans... Okay, they're going to do something a bit unusual. Because that is such a weak fire card, the only target that it's worth expending it on really are these low morale people here. And this is such an easy firing card that even a pair of men who are walking can put something out with their bolt action rifle. So they're going to fire. It's -1 in total because we have the cover of the building. So Private Nosenko is unaffected. Private Kvasnikov is unaffected, although it's close. Private Sokolov, no. And Private Zyakov, no. Phew, okay, big sigh of relief there. Their middle group is going to carry on moving for the moment because they're probably in the least danger thanks to their high morale, but they want to bring that gun into action now. So although this is very, very risky, they are going to play this terrain for its... Actually, come to think of it, no, hold a moment. That cancels itself out, but they're out in the open. So their group B is actually going to go to ground. And lastly, just to be massively vindictive, I can't say I blame them, my group B is going to be treated to a wire card. So the Germans draw their replacement hand. Oh, sorry, their replacement cards, fill out their hand. Ooh, lots of maneuver options. Oh dear. What am I going to do with what I've got? I do really want to get Mikhailov moving, but there's no way I'm going to waste a Rally 4 card on one man. I'm going to bring all the fellows in those buildings back. It makes much more sense to do that. And with the German scouting group drawing really close, it really makes sense to me to get some firepower going there to see if we can at least force them to go to ground. I am going to expend that movement card to get rid of the wire card on Group B because I really don't like that thing being there. And lastly, I could open fire now, but it's a bit chancy. I think I'm going to order Aliyev to... No, I'm not. Going to get Soloviev to help Borisov crew his weapon. I know it wastes a turn, but I have a horror of weapons malfunction, so I'm not going to take the risk. Just draw my 2 cards. And here we are again with a lot of difficult German decisions. Well, it's a bit of a no-brainer. Group B is going to have to try and make up some ground, catch up with the two arms on either flank that are pushing well ahead. And also, they don't want to let my Russians get too far forward, because otherwise I'll win the scenario that way, just by getting to range chit 4 and plonking some defensible terrain down. They can't have that. Unfortunately for me, German Group C is going to find a lovely, lovely hill to set themselves up on. And that is going to make things rather tricky for me. I just hope they don't get any firing. Well, could have been worse, and technically I don't know. So what can I get up to? Things are looking a bit healthier for me this turn. Group A, it's relative range 3 to the German Group B. We can still put out a decent amount of firepower. I think I'm going to try it. We're going to play that card, my Group A, firing into their Group B. The fact that they're moving in open ground makes it a firepower of 4. But then unluckily for me, they have this really formidable concealed card which throws me back down to 1. So Private Bernhoff, nothing happens to you. Private Grease, you're not bothered. And Corporal Hessel, no. Well, it was worth a try. These things are always worth a try. Meanwhile, this group, 14, 1 firepower point short. That is a shame. It's quite a weak firing card. So I think what we will do is target... Let's target the German Group C. So it's down to 1 firepower point because they're on the hill. Reduced to 0 because they have yet another concealment card. Private Schussel is not affected. Private Schumacher is not affected. And Private Streak is pinned. Okay. I'll take it. It's helpful. It holds them in place, at least for now. And lastly, although this is very, very profligate, I'm going to spend the Rally 3 card just to get Private Mihailov back in the game. At these ranges, I'm almost tempted to have someone go scrabbling down the stream bank just to see if they can find his the discarded machine pistol, but it may not be worth it. I think I'm going to be wanting every man who can to be shooting fairly soon. So because of all their reactions last turn, the Germans are a bit short on options again. Nothing's really going to happen over there. It all seems a bit under control. There are no great shakes for shooting on the move, but they might try it. Yes, Group B is just going to take a bit of a pop at my Group C. It's a very easy card to play, and they're really just firing from the hip and hoping. But it's not a bad idea, because although they don't know this, I've got nothing to improve my defensive capability. So Private Solovyov, you're all right. Private Mihailov, you're okay. Sergeant Aliyev, you're fine. And Corporal Borisov, you're all right. Okay, thank goodness. So far, so good. And again, profligacy in these matters is not restricted to my side of the front line. They're going to play a Rally 3 card to get Private Streak back in form. And with that, the German player fills his hand back up. Oh, we haven't seen snipers for a while. I wondered when they were going to come back in. Okay, back to me. I've got several options, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to stop the game at this point. I am going to continue it, but it's more that I've got to halt the video because unfortunately there's something I've got to go and attend to. So apologies for that, everyone. But things are developing. We have seen quite a bit of maneuvering. The two combatants have closed, well, the two combatant groups, I should say, and we have now had casualties. So the next video may well see the decision in this phase of the game. But I'll leave you there with that. Thank you very much for staying with me as I carry on with this series. And I hope you've found this video useful and enjoyable to follow. Much appreciate my regulars tuning in as always. And if you're visiting for the first time, a very warm welcome to you as well. Do watch out for the following video. There will be a following video because I want to see how this one ends and I look forward to updating my campaign sheet. But for now, thank you all ever so much for joining me. Thank you for your company. I much appreciate you tuning in. Bye.